So thanks everyone for joining us today. This is our next webinar in our series. I guess we're at 34 now. So my name is Michael McGuire. I'm president of Ramudden Digital. We're a ITS supplier to North America. Been in business for about 10 years. And today we're here to talk about SmartWatch, which is an in-house solution that brings together a number of technologies that are off the shelf, as well as our own proprietary hardware and software. And this is kind of an extension. If you've been on this series, I know we have a lot of repeat watchers. So if you've seen kind of the earlier SmartWatch videos or webinars, they're more focused on the core original use case for the product, which was pedestrian crossings and crosswalks. And today we're going to kind of look at what's happened since. And essentially that involves kind of an evolution of the use cases. This was always meant to be a very flexible, modular platform. So that we can say yes to a lot of problems and challenges that people present us with. And thankfully, that's exactly what's happened. So we want to look at some of those other use cases and as well as what's coming down the pipe as well. So we're going to try to keep this nice and concise. This deck is a little longer than I was planning to have it, so I'm going to try to stay on time, but Samantha's going to try to keep me honest. So what are we going to talk about today? First, I'm going to give you a quick intro to the Canadian structure of the company. What is SmartWatch? Then we're looking at two key applications we're focused on is SmartWatch-Counter, which is mid-block counting essentially, and trail counting, and then control, using the video sensor instead of as a camera, as a sensor to activate systems, to collect data, to monitor sites, etc. And then all that comes together in our cloud data portal. So we'll quickly take a look at what that involves and some of its features. And there is a quiz. So if you're not familiar with our webinar structure, we do a quiz at the end, which hopefully forces you to pay attention a little bit, and we will give away a little prize to the winning submitter. So the first one to kind of guess the multiple choice question will get the prize. So if you look on your right-hand side in the sidebar for GoToWebinar, there is a questions dialog box. So throughout the whole webinar, please jump in there, ask questions as they come to mind. And then when we get to the very end, I'll answer those. But in that same questions box is where we submit our answers to the quiz. So just keep that in mind. Have that open when we get to the quiz, and just try to quickly submit A, B, C, or D. And the first one to submit it will ship you out the prize. And we'll show you what the prize is, just a bunch of little merch. And then to finish off, we'll talk about some of the new applications coming down for SmartWatch, conversations we're having, and deployments we're planning, and then a Q&A at the end. So this, I was trying to update this in time because it's actually not so accurate anymore, but this is, as of 2 weeks ago, an accurate depiction of Ramudden Canada. So we used to be part of a company called Stinson, then we broke off, became Stinson ITS, maybe about 5 years ago, and then about 3 years ago, we were acquired by Ramudden, which is a Swedish-based infrastructure company that is focused on temporary and permanent infrastructure. And it's a very large company on the order of around 6,000 employees. And so we've been kind of undergoing rebranding. So 2 years ago, we rebranded as Ramudden Digital. Our legal name is still Stinson ITS, but we're part of a group within Canada that offers equipment rentals, traffic services focused around flagging, setting up work zones, and then Stinson, if you're familiar with the company, is a road safety signs and devices company. And the big change is that there's now a US division that is kind of an equivalent to Canada. And so there'll be a new chart here soon, but essentially we're making a big move into the US, and another acquisition was announced this morning. So stay tuned for cool developments in that way. But digital itself is not changing. We'll just grow a little bit, but our core services and focus is still the same. We still want to be kind of an end-to-end solution provider, providing design consultation from early days in the project to just supplying product if that's all you want. But we try to focus on turnkey solutions where we offer things as a service. And more we see the industry moving towards that. And traditionally it was other people's products that we were selling, and we would provide integration and services like that. But now our own products, like SmartWatch, are starting to be a big focus of ours, especially as we bring technology over from our partners in Europe we have a nice portfolio of solutions from in-house that we offer. So what is SmartWatch? So SmartWatch is, I always have a hard time describing it, but at its essence, it's a connected, easy to deploy AI camera at the edge. And by that, I mean, this box has all the power, communication, surge protection, et cetera, that you'd want to support a camera. And so the idea is all you have to do is give power to this box and you're done. And the camera's online, you can remotely re-aim it, zoom it in, do what you want. All you need to do is give it power. And so it's a very modular, easy to use camera at the edge with customizable video analytics. And then in the cloud, we have a very modular cloud portal. And the portal is simple, but it's not. But at its essence, it aggregates data from all our sensors and a number of other vendors in the market. And then it allows you a very customizable dashboard tool like you see here to build out how you want to view the data. And that can be different charts and graphs, KPIs, snapshots from the camera, et cetera. Kind of a blank canvas for you to fill with kind of the information from your systems that you want to see. And I'll go into that a bit more later. But essentially, these two tools let us say, yes, if someone says, you know, I want to watch out for pedestrians entering my work zone late at night, I can put a camera up, I can set alerts, I can say yes to that now. Someone said recently, we'll get to later, lane obstructions. We keep having bike lanes blocked by delivery drivers. Can you monitor that automatically and capture how frequent it's happening, video clips of it happening, and we can say yes, out of the box, we could do that tomorrow. So that's the dream of this product. It's maybe about 2.5 years old now, and it's really spurring some very interesting conversations. So this is, I love this product, very excited about how it's moved along, and yeah, hope you guys too. I hope this might foster some curiosity in the audience around potentially challenges that might be solved by SmartWatch, and I'd love to hear from you guys. Oh, too far. So at its essence, a couple kind of core features that we focus on. It can do multimodal counts. So the camera is really good at object classification. You can see at the bottom here, the classes that are supported. And within it, we can kind of use on-camera analytics to do a number of event detections. So we can set up presence, pulse zones. We can set up directional filtering, object level filtering to kind of look for certain behaviors or activity within the scene of the camera to trigger an event. So when we say safety event, often that's referring to unsafe interactions between pedestrians and vehicles, often at pedestrian crossings, but elsewhere as well. When we do systems at driveways and in other areas, we capture events like that. And one of the features we launched last year, which has been really powerful, is the ability to pull short video clips of those events. And so now not only can you say there was a non-compliance event at this crosswalk, you can actually see it. Because sometimes it's not so exciting. And technically it's a violation, but it's not a severely dangerous one. So this gives you a lot of context that is difficult to obtain otherwise. And then finally, the other applications is it's just a camera at the end of the day too. So you can just use it for remote monitoring, grabbing snapshots from the site, live video, recorded video, and then we also use it as a sensor to trigger warning systems of different types. And as far as how that's played out, as far as implementations, our core focus originally and kind of the genesis of why I designed the product was to be an enhancement for pedestrian crossings. We've been a TAPCO RRFB PXO supplier for the past 10 years, and we've deployed hundreds of these across Canada. And I always found there was a big deficiency in the quality of the sensors that are available for monitoring PXOs, especially as the demand for multimodal data and enhanced safety was kind of increasing in the last couple of years. And cameras with edge analytics had kind of reached tipping point where they were sufficiently accurate to perform the functions that I was looking to do. And so that's what started it all. But it's obviously a very flexible tool that can get applied to a lot of other applications. So we now are focused on mid-block and multi-use trail counting, as well as using it as a control device or as a sensor within our industrial warning systems of a variety of different types, and we'll touch on that. And then finally, just as monitoring, we often get the request to watch a site, look for certain behaviors, and it's very suitable to that as well. So as I mentioned, meant to be super simple, this is what makes up a smartwatch system. You saw in the previous photo, we do offer the combination of these devices so that the camera mounts directly into the face of the door, but that's really only conducive to horizontal mounting on a street light arm or a mast arm like this. In PXO and other deployments, we often deploy it as separated devices, but we have flexibility in how we offer it. The functionality is the same. It's more about convenience in finding an appropriate place to mount the device. And so the camera comes pre-terminated with these two cables. One of them is an Ethernet cable. The other one is a two-conductor kind of relay contact that we use to trigger based on analytics. And so you mount the camera, mount the connect box, you run these two wires into the box and give this box power, and you're done. So installations are very quick and easy. Not only that, but with the pre-configured, pre-tested LTE communication that's in this box, as well as with the camera, the second you turn it on, we have remote access. So we can remotely commission the device for you, which is very convenient when we have deployments in the West Coast or in the US or even in Europe. It makes it very convenient. And so as far as power, we're very flexible. We can be AC powered. We can be AC through a light pole tap. If you're not familiar with street lights in North America, they have a photocell port on top, which we can plug into to siphon AC 120 volt power off of the light. Sometimes that power is only available at night, in which case we have an industrial UPS system that we design and build in-house, which can convert that nighttime only power into permanent power. And what else? And solar power, we can power the device on DC or through a solar system. Mind you, it's a camera, so it's not a small solar system. So it's a sizable solar system that's required. So you need to make sure you have the appropriate infrastructure for that. But our core focus is this light pole tap and mounting on existing infrastructure like street light poles, because you already have a 30-foot pole, you already have power there. It seems like a really common sense place to start putting some of these sensors. And I understand there's jurisdictional fights and battles between hydro and who owns the poles and all that, but that seems to be getting better and better over time. So I anticipate that being a really good asset for kind of the smart city sensor deployments, and that's why we're focused on it. So first application, SmartWatch-Counter. Again, it's just deploying the same hardware set, but in a mid-block or a multi-use trail environment. So this is us mounted center median, and this is 4 lanes in each direction, as well as bike lanes, as well as pedestrians on the sidewalk. And so we're doing full multimodal directional counting and classification per movement. And so that's vehicle, truck, bus, and then pedestrians and cyclists on the sidewalk. And all that data is continuously being generated, sent up into our cloud. And then you have, these are just some quick snapshots from some of our systems showing some of the graphs, KPI numbers that you can show, tabular views. But this data is collected not per vehicle, but once a minute is the resolution of our data. So it's not bad, it's not quite real time, but it's pretty close. And that raw data, what we call raw data, is 1 minute data, is available immediately within the portal, 1 minute after it's collected. So it's there, it's in the API almost instantaneously, but it's not per vehicle data. So the core use case here is just counting, but because we have some of these other analytics available, we can start layering that into the scene. And so at this site, I could see people looking for jaywalkers crossing the road here. And we can set up an analytic that every time someone crosses the road in this section, say, capture a video clip of that. And we can see how often that's happening. If we had lane obstructions for bikes on, say, the left-hand side here, we can set up a zone to say if a vehicle stops in this zone for more than, say, 3 minutes, capture a video clip and upload it to the portal. So we can start to layer some of these event capture analytics onto a sensor that would normally be dedicated to a single function of counting. But even if you don't do any of that, the core counting functionality seems to be in very high demand. We've been a radar data collector sensor supplier for past 9 years with Houston Radar. So we offer portable and permanent radar sensors that are deployed across Ontario. It's significant. The MTO is adopted. City of Brampton's got over 40. Peel's got over 40. Durham's got a bunch. We've got them in the Northwest Territories, et cetera. So we've got extensive experience counting cars. The challenge is radar is not very well suited to counting bikes and people. And so all of our customers that are used to us being counting specialists kept coming back to us asking, but well, what about people? What about bikes? Can these sensors detect them? And with the answer always being no, that's why SmartWatch is very well suited to that, because as complete streets and the demand for non-vehicular counts become more and more popular and more in demand, we now have this sensor to offer to kind of fill that gap. And here's just a view of the analytics. And again, this is all on camera. I'm sure you've seen all the different analytics, all the major stop bar detection video solutions from Iteris to MyoVision to GridSmart, you name it. This is nothing special until you find out that this is all running on the CPU of the camera. So you don't have a big NVIDIA processor, next to it that has cost and implications for power. This is all on camera. And that's why, if you're familiar with kind of how this has evolved over the last 10 years, this is very impressive what it's capable of now. So this is an idea of the scene. And essentially what we do is we set a cross line and we count everything that passed that line, people on the sidewalk, bikes on the road, cars on the road, etc. And then we layer in different analytics in there as well. And I'm only going to touch on this slightly, but this is becoming very popular as well. So if you're familiar with AMAG, AMAG's a product we've been representing for the last 2 years, and they were focused on near-miss safety products. But because to get near-miss data and really good trajectories, you need extremely high-quality detection and tracking and classification. And so we ended up kind of creating a simplified version of the AMAG real-time solution to do just counting. And we've been doing that on a number of projects for the past 1.5 years. But the reason Transoft's logo is here now is because Transoft actually acquired AMAG at the end of last year. And so now I put AMAG so you guys can recognize it, but it's really just Transoft now. And so we're continuing that partnership with Transoft and are offering this counting only solution, as well as all the upgrades when it gets into safety and other applications. But what we do is we take our same hardware as is in that Connect box, except we add that external processor that I was just mentioning. So we have an NVIDIA-based edge processor that we place in the box, essentially all the electronics for LTE, PoE switch, etc., all the same. It's just a bigger box to accommodate that processor. And then we load the Transoft analytics onto that processor, along with a camera, whether it be 360 rectilinear, depending on the situation, and we can just count. And for us in the core smartwatch, it's really well suited and affordable for mid-block and multi-use trail counts. But the non-pro counter that I showed you here, this is not suitable for turning movement counts at intersections. And so if you want really rich counts in your trail or mid-block, you could use this, but where we see the most interest is at intersection deployments, where you want the rich classification, but also full turning movement counts as well. And the big uniqueness with this solution is the number of classifications which it supports. If you're familiar with kind of where the state of the industry is, nobody can do mobility scooter, nobody can do stroller, nobody can do wheelchair. At most, like our other core product, it's pedestrians and bikes, and some people can do e-scooters now. This is what really caught our attention early on with the solution, and why we broke out this counting only application. Because you can also see, even on the vehicle side, you have cars with trailer, pickup truck, and a van, some of these classes that you normally would not see from other analytics vendors. And not only that, but when you deploy this, Transoft has 2 separate AI models, one focused on roadway applications and one on multi-use trails. So once we move to multi-use trails, we can start differentiating between adult and children. We can also detect skateboards, dogs, and then the rest are all the same as there. So a bit more granularity when you move into a multi-use trail. And we've got quite a few deployments of the solution now. And so if you want extremely rich classification and turning movement counts at intersections, this is the solution I would push you towards. And then smartwatch control. So this is using the sensor or the camera as a sensor, which is becoming more and more popular. So essentially detect something and react to it somehow. And generally that means triggering a warning device, like one of these beacons, LED signs, or BMS that you see here. The video that I'm showing here is a use case from Sweden where they have a camera monitoring for trucks that are exiting the work zone. When they're detected, they automatically trigger this BMS sign to warn bikes that are going to be crossing this pathway. In a moment, I'll show you a similar use case that we're deploying in downtown Toronto that does something similar. But we're getting more and more interest in this, and we've made a big focus on developing and offering custom warning systems over the last couple of years, more on private property for truck warning, especially where trucks maneuver in industrial commercial settings around pedestrians. There's a big push to have warning systems installed to inform pedestrians or warn pedestrians that a truck is approaching or maneuvering around them, because there's been a number of incidents between trucks and pedestrians. So kind of leveraging what we've been doing on the industrial private side with some of these public applications. We're finding that the sensor is really useful for just actuating, but also because it's video, we can also then capture clips, do counting, provide remote viewing. And so it's a really nice enhancement to a lot of the warning systems that we've developed and deployed over the last 5-10 years. And so just to kind of highlight why this sensor is useful. Like when we've done these industrial warning systems, we've used ultrasonic sensors, microwave sensors, Doppler radar sensors, FMCW radar sensors, not so much LiDAR yet, but we've used kind of all the standard sensors that are in the traffic industry, and they're great and serve a purpose, but certain sensing requirements for warning systems just cannot be achieved with anything but camera analytics like this. Technically, LiDAR could probably do this, just LiDAR is extremely expensive and complex to set up. The core focus for smartwatch is affordability. And I mean sub 10,000, we're sub 8,000 most of the time, but if you look at those intersection video solutions, they're usually 20 to 30,000, and they're great. I don't want to say anything bad about that, but it's overkill for a lot of these applications like mid-block counting that we're talking about. So our focus for this sensor is kind of a turnkey, simple, and affordable solution for some of these use cases that we're talking about. So this one in particular is a facility that's getting built. It's part commercial, part industrial, but they had a problem where back up here in the top right is going to be a loading bay for trucks. And if you see this blue line, I'm hoping you can see my mouse, but the trucks come in on this driveway, and a lot of them just keep driving. They're going to another building. This is a big facility. But if they do want to go to this loading bay, they have to pull up, stop here momentarily, and then back up like 300 or 400 feet to get to those loading docks. And obviously, if the truck's backing up here, if you see this grid here, this is actually a sidewalk for pedestrians. And so the concern was, with all these trucks backing up, are pedestrians at risk? And of course they are. And how can we warn them? And so trying to use a traditional sensor to detect that a truck has pulled up, has paused momentarily, and is now reversing is something you can't do with microwave, you can't do with radar. So you have to, one, do object-based classification to say it's a truck, it's not a car. And then not only that, but it's traveling this direction. And then it pauses here, then it starts reversing. So we have zones, directional presence, then directional reversing to put that logic on the camera to have kind of 3 or 4 criteria to classify this as an actual event of them reversing. And then that will wirelessly trigger a visual and audio warning device. And I'll show you an example of that in a moment as well. But we're because pedestrian warning systems are becoming more and more popular, we've developed our own industrial audio warning speaker, essentially. And so we can enhance some of these signs that would traditionally only be beacons or LEDs. We can now add a speaker with custom messaging on it to provide more context, and especially for blind people who can't see these visual warnings, it's extremely important to make sure that they're catered to as well. So this was a unique case. This has gone from a single system to now I think 8 systems across this whole site because they really like the concept. And so we're excited to continue developing this. And I just put a note in here around our industrial UPS. So this street light pole where we're mounting has only nighttime power. And so by adding our industrial UPS, we can save them tens of thousands of dollars, which would be required to run a dedicated AC line to these sites. So the camera will run off the light pole with the industrial UPS, and then these individual signs will be solar powered because they're so infrequently activated. They don't need a ton of power to sit there standing ready to be triggered when a truck does come through. So another use case is very similar. So this is a work zone gate entry and exit warning system. We're starting primarily focusing on the exit, but the intent is to kind of develop the solution to be more and more sophisticated over the next year as we focus more and more on this use case. So if you're familiar with long-term work zone projects, especially in the downtown urban area of Toronto, it can be very tricky for trucks to exit and enter the roadway, whether it be sidewalk traffic conflicts, bike conflicts on the roadway, or even vehicles alone. Often you need 3 or 4 flaggers to jump out and block all these different approaches to let trucks in or let trucks out. And so what we're doing here is we're trying to, one, use some of our industrial warning systems to provide automated warnings to approaching vehicles and people, but also control signals to tell the trucks when to go and when to stop. And where SmartWatch plays into this is we're looking at, is a truck waiting to exit? And then that can trigger kind of the exit warning system protocol and extensions if there's multiple trucks, etc. And then a second camera. One thing I didn't mention is that the SmartWatch Connect box can support up to 4 cameras. And so in this case, we're going to be using 2. And the second camera is watching where the truck interacts with people and bikes and cars and looking for safety events. So if a truck's exiting and a person enters the sidewalk area of the driveway, we can capture that with simple analytics of just proximity. So if they're present, say within 5 meters of this truck, that's concerning. Maybe they stop and they just stand there, it's not a big deal, but maybe it is an actual interaction that the constructor and the city might want to be aware of. And so we can now capture that event, grab a little video clip and store and see how frequently, how safe is this driveway? And does that change over time as we add enhancements to the system? And this is just a quick little demo. So we're deploying this in the next 2 weeks. And this is just a little, oh, you know what? Sam, you tell me if my audio is picking this up because I don't know if I shared audio, but I just wanted to show kind of the custom messaging coming out of our speaker system. Can you hear that, Sam?
It's low, but yes, it is coming through.
Anyways, it's saying warning, trucks exiting when flashing. And this is our speaker device on top. So this can be a custom MP3 saying whatever we want it to say. And this is just what we chose for this warning system. But this same kind of industrial speaker, kind of text to voice device that we've created is also going to get integrated into this other solution that we mentioned. And now I think I'm running a little bit low on time. I've got 9 minutes left to get to questions. So Cloud Data Portal, I don't have time to do a demo, but it's essentially a data ingestion and data visualization tool. And so these canvases, these little squares where content is kind of placed, those are all movable, resizable, and we support bar graphs, line graphs, KPI numbers like you see here. We have TMC diagrams, table view of your count data, table view of all your events and the video clips associated with it, We can grab live snapshots from the camera every hour. We can also upload static images. If you have a site overview or you want to put your logo there, we support that. Adding maps, etc. Lots of functionality in there, but it's basically get your data into one place, normalize it so you can kind of compare one vendor to smartwatch, so we can compare Houston radar to MyoVision to smartwatch, all on the same dashboard, where those cap data, data sets are all normalized and equivalent. Again, one of the big features that I love is this video capture, because having all these entries without the context of the video is really much less powerful. So now we have a ranking feature and some comments where you can kind of go through, review these clips. This is a manual process. This is collected automatically, but the review is manual. And what we do is focus on filtering the analytics, so it narrowly grabs events that are interesting and not a bunch of false positives. Here's an example of a clip from one of our PXO deployments. Just somebody crossing and a vehicle intrudes into the crossing, has to make a sudden stop. It's essentially a near miss in that case. So again, we're not doing sophisticated analytics for some of this. That is essentially presence. So a pedestrian is in the crossing and a vehicle is within a certain distance of the crossing or in the crossing itself. And if those two kind of criteria are true, we say, yes, that's an event. We log it with a timestamp, and then we reach out and grab video clips for that time. Okay, quiz question time. So I'm going to put up the question, and then when I click next, it's going to be multiple choice, A, B, C, or D. So jump into the question dialog at the right-hand side of your screen, and that's where you enter it. So how many road user classification categories are available within the SmartWatch-Counter Pro? So again, this is the Transoft solution with the expanded group, and this will be the roadway, the larger number of the classifications. So get ready, I'm gonna add it now. A, 9, B, 14, C, 16, or D, 18. And then Samantha's gonna keep an eye out in the chat to look for who was first.
We have some very keen viewers. Before we had the options up, we already had the correct answer. It was C, 16. And the first person to answer was Michael. So I'll reach out to you afterwards to get your mailing address.
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for participating. And we'll send you some swag shortly. And oh, there's C is the answer. So what's next? So we keep getting requests for different use cases. So I want to give you a bit of a peek into some of these questions. And I touched on one of them earlier, which was bike lane obstructions. And so as you know, there's a big focus on bike infrastructure right now and how useful it is or isn't. And even if the city's really supportive of it, often it's very challenging to manage. If you follow that Toronto police officer that's on TikTok, running around ticketing all day downtown, that's what I think of. And so we were approached by a city saying, can you watch for this and can you detect it? And it was very nice to be able to say, yes, we can do vehicle specific classification. We can put kind of time in zone to say only after they're in the zone for X amount of seconds or minutes will we trigger the zone, and that creates an event. And so this is one we're deploying shortly. Another one is illegal stopping in school zones. So we have a client that has a school zone where people are constantly parking to pick up their children or drop them off when they're not supposed to. They're supposed to keep that area clear, and they're having a hard time monitoring it to know how frequently it's happening and who's doing it. So now we're going to be capturing events on kind of the frequency of these incidents. And I don't know exactly how they're going to respond to it, but more we're providing just the data to say this is how often it's happening. And if you want to record at full resolution, you could potentially grab a license plate from the people that are doing it. But we haven't got that far with them yet, but we can perform the requested function very easily out of the box. The final one, which is actually fairly well along, and we have some prototypes out for testing right now, is adding our camera to portable signals. So as I mentioned, we're a work zone company. the biggest work zone management company in the world. And so we have hundreds of these portable signals in our fleet. And we had a challenge with a customer last year where they were getting people constantly running the red and not wanting to wait. And often these are country roads, so they think it's not a big deal. Meanwhile, these stretches can be almost up to a kilometer sometimes. So even though it looks free, there's cars coming. And once you have opposing traffic meet in the middle, it is a nightmare to try to unwind the situation. And so what we did is deploy the sensor to monitor what is the status of the signal. Is it red? And is a vehicle driving through the red or the stop bar? And those two are the criteria that create an event. And then we capture video clips each time that event happens. And so this is not launched yet, but it's very, very mature and coming soon. And again, so that's it for new applications. This is a question and answer period. Samantha is going to start reading down some questions, but please, my contact information is on the next slide. And I think even in the invite. So please email me if you have questions of challenges you have, or can it do this, can it do that? I love that and would love to work with you on exploring it. So I'm hoping there's a bunch of questions in there, but Sam, you tell me.
Yep, there's a few. Do you support streaming your camera feed to a VMS? And then they asked the second question, I think, to clarify, can you trigger alerts to a VMS based on analytics events? For example, jaywalking, vehicle collisions, etc.
To a VMS, not out of the box, I don't think so. We can stream to a VMS, certainly. The challenge is that we're LTE connected. So you need to kind of be conscious. If you have unlimited data SIM cards, then absolutely. Often we supply these systems with our own SIM cards that are usually 2 to 5 gigabytes a month, depending. So we have a little bit of room for streaming, but not a ton. So if you were to go over our LTE, we'd suggest kind of a very low frame rate, like once a second or once every minute, something like that. But if it's your own, you can absolutely stream, or you can set it up that only when you connect to the camera does it actually stream through Genetec or whatever VMS you're using. So it's certainly possible. For the events, the event logic happens in our cloud. So we're reaching out to the camera to see what's happening in the various kind of detection zones that we set up. And then the logic that turns that into an event happens in our cloud. So the camera is not conscious enough. You might be able to recreate that logic in the VMS to look for something similar, but I think it would be challenging. So it would have to be an integration with our cloud API to get that event into the VMS.
Someone asked, can it record speed?
Can it, the video feed. So yes, the camera is always recording. And so we supply it with, I think, 100 gigabyte SD card, which is usually good for about 30 to 60 days of recording, depending on the quality. And typically we record at extremely low resolution. As you can see in those video clips, it's meant to be de-identifying, so you can't tell a face, you can't see a plate. However, we do have the ability to record at any resolution you want. We can also record with, say, 2 days of extremely high resolution, and then 30 days of low resolution. And that low resolution recording can be where we get our video clips from. So you maintain the privacy protection of all the video clips, but if police or somebody wants to jump in because of an event and they want license plate or faces, then we can accommodate kind of a combination recording on the sensor itself.
I think they were asking, can it detect speeds?
Oh, speed, sorry, misheard you. So the camera can detect speeds, but the API in the camera is not quite good enough right now to pull that data into the portal. So we can use speed as kind of a trigger for analytics to detect overspeeding or how many people are traveling X kilometers over the speed limit, but it's very limited in how we can use that data. So it's there, but we don't use it a lot right now. But we anticipate in the next 6 months, we will be able to also collect speed on all these objects as well.
Heidi mentioned we just got SmartWatch installed and we are excited to get our training in a few weeks.
Absolutely. No, those two in Milton are very beautifully mounted. As I said, we're trying to focus on the street light lamp views because you get a view of the entire kind of scene. We started originally trying to get on the same pole as the PXO, and it was just good enough to see the full crossing, so it would do what we wanted to do. But you can't really see what else is happening around in the area. So now that we're on these streetlight poles more and more often, probably about 90% of our deployments are in that view, And it's really interesting because you can watch for jaywalking and other activities in the area. We're viewing maybe 150, 200 meters around an area instead of a narrow 40-meter kind of stretch of the PXO itself or whatever the camera's staring at.
Someone asked, does the system include an open API? Can data be pulled to our internal server?
Absolutely, it does have a RESTful API. It's not, I guess it is public, but you require a custom key from us in order to pull data from it. So absolutely, the cloud, the camera itself does not have a device API that's exposed. It's the cloud portal. So once the data comes and is aggregated in our cloud, we provide a REST-based API that cities and other agencies can use to pull the data in. And just on that point, it's count data, event data, but the video clips are currently not available through the API. So that's the one thing that out of everything you would see on the portal, that's the one piece that is of interest, but not currently offered through the API.
Someone asked, does SmartWatch Pro measure speeds?
Yes, it does. But how we deliver Pro now, the base offering does not generate speed. It's just class, turning movement, and counts, but it is able to generate it. So it's a slightly larger cost than the base model that we typically offer, but it is possible, absolutely. The challenge is that we require what's called video calibration. So the camera image has to be calibrated so that it's flattened onto the earth. So we can understand kind of the GPS coordinate of every single object on the screen, and then we can start to infer, distance and time to get speed. And that calibration process is very time consuming. So there's a cost to do that calibration, and that's why speed is separate from kind of the base counting offering that we have there, but it is possible.
Those look like the end of the questions for now. Obviously, if you think of something after, you can email us. Michael's contact information is going to be on the next slide.
Absolutely. And this one's corrected. I noticed we had it wrong in the first place. So as of a couple of days ago, I'm now a managing director, not a president, because in this big group of companies, I think there was like 15 presidents. So they're trying to make things a little bit more streamlined. But yeah, this is my email and my phone number here. If you have any other questions, send them through. We will respond back to the whole group. If there's any, general questions, or if you have any application specific or any other use cases you want to discuss, please email me, and I'm happy to set up a kind of one-on-one to kind of go through that with you. But we ended up right on time, so thank you everyone for taking the time to join us today. I hope we'll see you next month at the next webinar, and have a good day.